Coming to you live 30 feet underground with a joke.
I'm Carson.
Austin. And today, a
Map.
map. One map.
A singular map.
The Crisis Map from crisisgroup.org. We've been talking about the Crisis Map all day.
There's a lot of crises, so, there's a bunch to talk about.
Which is good for us here, obviously, but not good for Colombia, where we're starting off with what I believe is police brutality and a violent crime rise
Mm-hmm.
in its rural areas.
Mm-hmm. So the thing with Colombia and a lot of countries around the world is, the United States is considered a role model, or at least we force other countries to try to fit our role. So when we had our police brutality incident over the last couple of years, people in other countries also had protests sparked by our incident of police brutality. And I believe the Colombia situation started in a similar vein, where people started protesting Colombia's police brutality, and it has just continued to emerge from there, and it has become a more violent event with rising crimes and more police brutality in response to protest. And it's just not a good situation.
And that leads to the escalation of, say, riots. For instance, it says 22 police stations have been set on fire across the country. And it just continues to escalate, as most of these issues do, where it starts and one side escalates, and you obviously have to escalate on the other side. Kind of similar to what we mentioned last week.
Mm-hmm. So, this issue is very complex. If you look at Colombia's history, the police have never been the greatest. They've accepted bribes, similar to a lot of police in Latin America. And they're also supported by the United States government because we want to stop the drug lords. So let me ask you this, Austin. In response to this increased police brutality, and then, of course, the counter-response of the protesters, what do you think the action should be of the United States?
In this case?
Mm-hmm.
You have this big dumb smile on your face, like you're trying to get me to say something wrong. So I'm worried about saying anything. The United States response?
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the United States intervening on this.
That's fair.
I don't think it's a good idea.
So either.
Obviously, if the United States came in on either side, it would look bad. Because if they go in on the side of the government and on the police, now the citizens are going to be like, what the hell? You know what I mean? But if they go in on the side of the people against these police brutalities and such, then the government's going to be like, what the hell?
Mm-hmm.
So there's really no winning side to take, I believe, in this one.
I don't think so either. How do you think this is going to end up? Do you think there's going to be meaningful police reform, or do you think this is just falling on deaf ears?
No.
That's what I'm afraid of, too.
Yeah, Colombia isn't really the best. A lot of the South American countries, not a lot, but in the area, such as Brazil, obviously, aren't really the most civilly safe countries in the world.
No.
And this obviously does not contribute to that at all.
One of my major concerns with this is, are you familiar with FARC, the rebel group from Colombia?
No.
A couple years ago, FARC and the Colombian government came to a peace agreement. FARC was considered a terrorist organization. They considered themselves freedom fighters. The agreement that they came to was that FARC would get 10 seats in the Colombian government.
Nice.
And then the war would stop. But this came after almost a decade of conflict. So Colombia did create peace after a decade.
And how much does that change today?
And that's what my big concern is, because if this creates another rebel group, how long is this conflict going to last?
FARC 2.
Yeah, FARC Part 2, How long was this going to last? We could be seeing this conflict start today and last for the next decade.
Yeah, and obviously on our map, it shows that this situation has been going on since before May, and it's now worsening,
Mm-hmm.
which means it's going to get worse before it gets better, obviously. But thank you, Colombia, for coming on.
Yeah.
Let's move on to another one. Go
Give it
ahead,
up
take
for
a look at the
Colombia.
map. Thank you, Colombia. Be
All right.
safe out there, Colombians.
All right, now we're on to Egypt.
Across the world. In Egypt.
Egypt is the next worsening condition on this crisis map. President Sisi, who shouldn't be a president because he is a military elected president. You know, he used his military to gain control. You know, people aren't real happy with him right now. And so protests have broken out across the country. And, you know, it's afraid that this could lead to another revolution or a conflict within Egypt again.
I don't like the word anti-Sisi, referring to those against Sisi. I just don't like the way that word sounds. Anti-Sisi.
I remember I was in speech and debate in high school, and we had a running joke about President Sisi that he founded ISIS.
Oh, I get it.
Just think about it.
I get it. I don't need to think about it.
Big brain.
There are a whole 4 letters in that name. There's like, how many possible jokes can you come up with?
But yeah, so it's not looking great. Some civilians have been killed, it looks like. Police stations have also been burned in this country, like in Colombia. And it's it's a bad situation. Thoughts, Austin?
Thoughts, Austin, huh? Pretty similar to, not even pretty similar, very similar to the Colombia situation. Obviously, I don't believe the United States has had as much of an impact on Egypt as Colombia in terms of influence. But never good when the police are being brutal.
Now, Colombia, I believe, is a democratically elected government with
Yeah,
quotations.
with the quotes,
you know,
right.
There's some election rigging in that nation for sure. Egypt, however, is not democratically elected at all. There's not even a consideration about them being authoritarian. Does the difference change then?
Oh, yeah.
Should we consider a different approach with Egypt than compared to Colombia?
I really don't like the United States getting involved in Egypt either, to be fair. Especially because of how close it is to the Middle East. And escalating stuff from the United States in Egypt near the Middle East could lead to tensions.
Mm-hmm.
We mentioned a few weeks ago the deal with that Trump passed with the UAE in the Middle East. And that would definitely hurt something like that if we just came into Egypt
Mm-hmm.
and overthrew this regime.
Well, Egypt has a deal with Israel also.
Right.
Yeah, that's where Trump got the idea from.
So extra not good.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go to Egypt.
So how do you think this conflict is going to end then?
Oh, jeez. Well, it can go any direction on this one. Usually, rising up against an authoritarian regime doesn't go too well unless it's everybody doing it. We can talk about Hitler, for instance. And when he was going for chancellorship, he and his German Workers' Party, they protested the at the time, I don't remember his name, the leader of Germany, the president, and they didn't win. Hitler got thrown in jail. If it's not the entire population or a big majority of the population, I don't think that you can really hinder an authoritarian regime.
I'm on the same page. I don't think Egypt's going to be successful. The big concern with me for Egypt is Egypt was one of the Arab Spring countries. So they've had their revolution, and their revolution produced Sisi, who is now starting another revolution, question mark. You know, so like it's a cycle because they had a revolution, made a dictator, now they want another revolution. And it doesn't seem it's going to be as energetic as the second time, or the first time.
Whoa, revolution.
Yeah.
Oh, yay, revolution.
Yeah, about that kind of level of revolution.
The revolution that you're like in a bar, you're just like, we should do a revolution. It's like, yeah.
And then you
That's
get
it.
home and sober up, and then you're like, I changed my mind.
Probably not the best idea, but the other friend, he sobered up and he's like, yeah, revolution.
Yeah, so not a great situation in Egypt. Hope that clears up. I applied for grad school there. So,
Where?
American University of Cairo.
I was about to say Cairo, but I didn't want to look like an idiot if there wasn't anything in Cairo.
I mean, there's not really a lot else there.
There's the pyramids.
Yeah, I fair.
The example that proves the
I don't know if I
guess.
want to go to college in the pyramid, though.
Why not? That'd be sick.
Sure.
Learn from the best.
What, the dead mummy?
Yeah. Whoever's in pyramid number 3.
3.
You'll take social studies in pyramid 4.
Mm-hmm.
You'll take foreign relations in pyramid 2. What room? Good luck.
You've got to find it yourself. All right, next up on our list is Uganda.
Let me take a wild guess. Police brutality.
No.
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 No. Are police buildings being burnt down here too?
Maybe.
Maybe.
But not due to police brutality reasons.
Oh, yeah. That's great.
This one's more of an election issue.
Oh, so it's the same kind of issues, just not with the police brutality part.
Yeah, same kind of uprising issue. Let's see. Uganda's getting ready for a new election, but the guy who's running isn't very popular. And
he's the only one going to win.
Yep, people are concerned he's going to steal a victory, rig the election, and they're not having it.
Obviously not a good thing to have. I doubt anyone would want to rig the election. Look at how we're treating it here. It hasn't even been rigged yet.
It's in the process.
Yeah, it's going one way or the other. But I don't think it's as bad as it is here.
They are firing tear gas, though, the police. So that's a time.
Never a good sign. So, for the third time, this is pretty much almost the same kind of issue. Obviously different, it's just different, but like same key components we've been talking about.
This one has the opportunity, though, to have a successful resolution, because this isn't against a dictator, or this isn't against like the police brutality system. It's against one person running for election.
And he can still lose.
He could lose. He could withdraw his election. He could die and be replaced by another candidate. So this one has the ability to have a peaceful resolution.
And especially without foreign interference from, say, us.
Now, what will probably happen is there should be some United Nations intervention, because the UN does offer election checks to make sure democracy was fair and square. So that would be nice to have. Hopefully the ruling party will allow that.
An election vibe check, huh?
An election vibe check.
UN just pops in.
Happy birthday to the UN, by the way.
Oh yeah, that'll be next week on a date that you don't know.
I don't remember.
Let me look it up.
But it is going to be their 75th birthday. It's going to be a great time.
UN birthday, search. Oh, unbirthday.
Unbirthday.
This isn't what I wanted. United Nations founded date, October 24th. So that will be next Saturday.
Next Saturday, we will be having a UN birthday podcast.
Yeah, happy birthday to them next week.
Next week.
Good thing we did it this week and said happy birthday this week.
They deserve 2 birthdays. They're great.
I guess so.
All right, next
Burundi.
country. Burundi.
Sorry. Sorry.
Go for it.
Burundi, huh?
Give us the rundown.
So this one is a worsening situation due to the rising up of a populace to go against the ruling party with a bunch of deadly attacks that are also going against its youth wing in that party, to my belief, and it's racially motivated, with the government stepping up to crack down on opposition and using that almost to also sweep the minority race, the Tutsi race, as well. They're trying to get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's the Tutsi. I mix them up.
Tutsi and
Tutsi and Hutsi. the Tutsi and Hutu races. The Tutsis are the minority, obviously. I mentioned that already. And this is being used to almost sweep them aside with an excuse.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, in 1994, Rwanda,
Rwanda.
neighboring country, did the same thing.
And we got a movie out of it.
We did get a movie out of it, Hotel Rwanda. Good movie.
Yeah.
I mean, sad movie, but very
movie.
educational. Updating on the Hotel Rwanda situation, their neighbor, clicking on them, things aren't going great for them.
They're tensed up at the border.
Yes, because they are also concerned about what's going on in Burundi, but also Rwanda has an election coming up this year. And the man from Hotel Rwanda, the guy who ran the hotel, tried to file for president against the current regime, and he has been thrown in prison.
Well.
Yep.
Man, yeah. You hate to see it.
So it is...
It's fake.
So Rwanda is very much an authoritarian regime right now, or at least acting like it, and they are prepping for war against their two unstable neighbors.
If the outcome in them is unfavorable,
they would totally go in for war.
Going for it.
And Rwanda, due to the 1994 incident, has been relatively protective of the Tutsi people. So if Burundi goes after the Tutsis, you could see Rwanda getting involved in that.
I've probably seen a lot of refugees coming over from the border.
It's an experience.
Yeah. Unlike a lot of the other ones we've covered today, very racially motivated, of course.
This one is very much so. And it's very deep racial. These racial divides have existed for a long time.
And almost, to my knowledge, it's a strange one to be like...
Well, it's a man-made racial divide. So the way the Tutsis and the Hutus were created was Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda were all Belgian colonies. And so the Belgians went around these territories and they did a census when they got control of the land. If you looked white, a light, dark-skinned person, you would be considered a Tutsi. If you had extremely dark skin, like most of the people in that region, you would be considered a Hutu. So, the Belgians created this separation so that way they could create a society where whites on the top, blacks who look like whites as a middle class, and then Africans who are actually the stereotypical African at the bottom sect.
You almost figure when you're in that bottom sect, you mentioned Tutsis are usually lighter skinned, but if they're not too different, you know what I mean? It's not like a black and white issue.
It'd be like a British person and an Italian.
Right.
They're both whites. They're just different shades of white.
Yeah, and it's not a huge difference, really.
No, not at all.
When it's been steeped in this hatred for centuries, it's there, and you can look at on from here and be like, what's the difference? You know what I mean? I don't see the problem here.
And the big issue is in Rwanda, the Tutsis were killed in Rwanda because the Tutsis had control of the government. They were still seen as the elite controlling the entire population. And that's the same marketing that you're seeing going on in Burundi right now, is that the Tutsis are elitists, they're taking your wealth, they're manipulative, very similar characteristics that were laid upon the Jews in Germany during the Holocaust.
Damn it, I wanted to say that.
I beat you to it.
I know, I love saying history stuff.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see if this evolves into the Rwandan conflict part 2.
Right.
Now, do you think the United States should step in at this circumstance?
Right now, no. But if we're going towards genocide, the UN needs to step in. I don't want the US itself to be like, okay, it's go time. But like the UN, if this is spiraling towards genocide, needs to step in.
I agree. We failed to do that last time,
Right.
and I think we can't make that same mistake twice. That makes the international community look so bad. Because it's one thing to allow a genocide and then allow a genocide in another corner of the world. They're different. They have different characteristics.
Right.
But it's a completely other scenario if you allow the same genocide to happen twice.
Almost 20 years later.
Yeah. That, without a doubt, proves you did not learn your lesson.
Right. Obviously, you mentioned if it happens in Burundi, and there's a genocide in. I'm not going to get very political, but I was going to say somewhere in China, for instance. There's vastly different circumstance.
Yes.
The UN is not going to come marching into China to stop a genocide.
No. They can't.
Yeah.
They've complained before and it doesn't go out great.
Hey!
Stop
it!
Yeah.
No.
Alright.
Next up on the list, this little red boy up here.
Well, it's two little red boys because there's a war. Azerbaijan and Armenia are going to war.
War.
Yeah. So this one's different compared to the ones we've talked about earlier where it's people versus their governments. This time it's government versus government. So it's a very different conflict. What is the reasoning behind this conflict?
I do not know if it will say. Obviously, there's a lot of border tension. There
was a conflict previously, also in 1994. Great year.
Good old days.
But they agreed to a ceasefire. So this is probably just kicking up border disputes over a long topic. I believe, if I remember correctly, Azerbaijan is a pocket state
of
Russia.
That probably makes that I probably should figure that out, huh?
Yeah, it's almost like we have a map in front of us showing,
a
very close border to Russia.
Hey, there's a little gray boy in between Russia and Azerbaijan. But yeah, probably should have figured that out, huh? What you looking up?
I was looking up the Russia glance on this. Russia is very anti-war right now. They do not want to see this conflict come into existence. So I'm going to take a shot in the dark and say if Russia doesn't want it to happen, it's not going to happen. There might be a scrimmage here and there, but if Russia starts sending tanks down, that conflict isn't going to last too long.
It's done, yeah. I think it's almost kind of strange. Russia's so against it all.
Probably in that general area.
Yeah, it's like we mentioned earlier with Egypt, a very volatile area. This Armenia and Azerbaijan right north of the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
So very dangerous.
Armenia gets a tough break. They've had a lot of conflict throughout the last 100 years. And so I'm going to guess Azerbaijan is the aggressor in this situation because Armenia tends to take a back seat on a lot of things.
And what are the chances that Azerbaijan, you mentioned, is a pocket state, right?
They have close relations with the Russians.
What are the odds that they are starting the skirmish in the hopes of having Russia just come in and help with the skirmish, do you think?
It's possible. To get an official statistic out there, around 40% of people in Azerbaijan speak Russian fluently and have cultural ties to family in Russia. So about 40% of the population is technically Russian.
Probably back in the USSR days.
Which is probably why Russia doesn't want the conflict. Because Russia sees this as defending Russian people. They don't see this as preventing a conflict between two countries. They see it as saving their civilians from war. Because that's how they probably view Azerbaijan as members of Russia, even though they're not.
Just different people seeing blood.
Yeah, different
Close
borders.
cousins.
Very, very interesting circumstance. That one will probably cool down, hopefully.
The Taiwan Strait is the final red boy on the map, to my knowledge.
Yes.
Because these aren't red boys over here,
No.
where I'm pointing, that you can't see.
No. So this is the last crisis that has increased recently.
Yes.
Or
deteriorated, I guess.
Deteriorated, yeah. Tensions have risen. So U.S. officials are visiting Taiwan.
Uh-oh. And, whenever we especially visit Taiwan, China doesn't really like that very much.
No. And they have every right not to. We made a deal with China that we would not acknowledge Taiwan as a country. And so every time we consider recognizing Taiwan as a country, we're going back on a promise we made. So it's an interesting situation. Because
Right.
Taiwan deserves to be treated properly.
Like a country, because,
But they also don't deserve to be, acknowledged under the deal we previously made.
We've kind of shot ourselves in the foot back then, huh?
Yeah. And Trump has done a lot to aggravate China. And this is probably just one of the many things he does as part of his trade war with China. One thing I read a couple weeks ago was that due to COVID, U.S. Navy vessels were getting sick, and so we had to return a lot of them home and quarantine them. Previously, the United States runs military operations around Taiwan just to, keep the area safe, see what's going on. And for the first time in 40 years, I want to say, due to this COVID crisis, China had their military navy go around Taiwan, which that was a very scary moment for this crisis.
I can see that. I can see why.
Yeah.
You have, if you're in Taiwan at this point, you have the country that wants nothing more than just take you back. Your main protector, I guess, is gone. They're sick. Taking a day off.
Yeah.
And then it's almost like sharks.
Mm-hmm.
Sharks in the water.
It was more or less a political play. Nothing happened. China didn't kill anybody, but it's still a scary thought.
It's like a reminder almost, like, hey,
we're here.
We know you.
And we can get you back whenever we want to. And we've seen how they've treated the people in Hong Kong.
Yeah, they're not the nicest people in China.
No.
The uppers.
No.
Hopefully we don't get canceled for me saying that, but China isn't the nicest when it comes to its leaders.
So do you think this conflict is going to become anything interesting this year? Or do you think it's more of just the same thing that's happened for 50 years?
I think this year is just especially here this is just stepping on each other's toes. There's not going to be anything huge happening here in my mind, because I really don't think China is going to attack Taiwan at any point this year.
No.
Especially this year. We're in October, so saying the rest of this year is only 2 months, but even in the next year, attacking Taiwan just seems like such a dangerous idea. Who knows what kind of underlying political lines are going through everywhere around the South China Sea. And speaking of the South China Sea, we can talk about the South China Sea.
Well, we got one more red one. We kind of
red
forgot
one.
about it because it's real tiny.
Oh, there he is.
Lebanon.
Lebanon.
Their crisis has worsened.
Their new prime minister, he resigned after it became more polarized. You think that we're polarized here today. Lebanon is much more sided.
Much more.
And on a path towards potential civil war in the future.
They've had civil wars in the past also.
So
it's very likely. The main issue with Lebanon is their society is very polarized. In an attempt to account for this polarization, though, their constitution was built to account for that. So their president will always be a Christian. It's like the Speaker of the House or the leader of the
Wow.
Senate will always be a Shiite Muslim, and then there's another government position that'll always be Sunni, and doesn't
The Holy Trinity.
work great.
I wonder why.
Yeah,
Who would have guessed? Perhaps centuries of religious squabble, and they control three separate parts of government. Who would have thought that wouldn't work out well?
yeah. Apparently they didn't.
And you know that when they were writing this Constitution, when they're drafting it, they're like, "This is brilliant."
Well, I'm sure they did because the thought would have been that there's a reason
agree.
the Christian is the president. Because who do you think helped make the country? The British, the
Oh,
French,
right.
the United States. So they were like, oh, we'll put a Christian in
Yeah.
charge. A Christian can handle this. And then they did.
They can't because they don't have the entire government.
I believe it's about 40% Christian, 30% Shia, 30% Sunni.
So you're pretty much a dead split.
It's a very dead split. And it didn't work out in Lebanon's favor because although the Sunnis and the Shias don't agree on a lot, they do agree that they don't like Israel. And so it was a 60-40 vote
Against
to go to
Israel.
war against Israel, which, as you can imagine, did not go well.
Israel just creates a whole heaping pile of problems, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yep, so great times. But those are all the red increasing conflicts.
The bad boys, yeah.
So we're gonna start talking about some other conflicts that
Are
aren't
here, but
as bad. Yeah.
stale almost. That are still just going along.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not being worsened by any means yet.
Yet.
We don't know what'll happen in November.
Yeah.
I know what'll happen in November. Friday the 13th is in November.
Wow.
Aren't you excited?
Not really.
I'm very excited.
What are you gonna do?
Be excited.
Congratulations.
So, for those of you who don't know, Friday the 13th will be on Friday the 13th
of
of November.
Wow.
All right, let's talk about the South China Sea.
Yes, circling back where we should be. South China Sea.
There's been border and tension disputes in the South China Sea for years now. I mentioned I'm a junior in college now. When I was a junior in high school, I wrote about tensions in the South China Sea.
Mm-hmm.
And they're still happening to this day because nobody wants to give up the South China Sea. China is so willing to get this stretch of naval land that they're building islands to claim the territory and the sea by saying this is a Chinese island,
Mm-hmm.
so we get the sea around it.
Yep.
Which is that's a funny thing to me.
When I was in China, I was telling you this story earlier, but when I was in China, it was 2016. We were in Shanghai. We were at the port. There was dozens of boats, and we asked the guy what's on the boats, and the dude was like, sand. And we were like, why? What's the sand for? And the dude was like, we're making islands. Like,
It's so casual, like, yeah, we're just making our islands and stuff.
yeah, like it is
No.
very interesting situation. And I don't remember the exact number, but the South China Sea, the trade route is over $1 trillion
right.
worth of trade a year.
Which is why they don't want to give it up.
And there's like $4 or $5 trillion worth of oil on the sea floor down there. That if China started doing deep sea drilling,
Get rich.
they could get a lot of
Right.
oil.
Which is why, like, there is such an intense amount of tensions in this area because if you have oil on your land, you really don't want to give up that land.
No.
Bold political statement there. But oil is good to have.
Hot take of the year.
I'll take it a year. Oil is good if you have oil. But obviously, this is probably very unlikely to resolve
No.
in a satisfying manner.
And there's no way to make it.
Because someone's going to lose land, be it China or whoever else has land in the area. I believe Japan has land in the area.
Japan,
Yeah,
Philippines,
Philippines,
Vietnam, Taiwan.
And obviously China wants all of it because China's big and dumb.
And like it's so hard to clear up because like Japan's claim to the area. Japan wasn't necessarily the nicest colonizer in the 1940s. We went to war over that. So should they have it because they didn't get those islands really fair and square? Should Taiwan have it? They're not a country.
Let's make the islands a country.
Their own a country?
Yep.
Is that your solution?
Sure.
If nobody gets it.
Nobody gets it. Sorry. We get it. It's now United States.
Does that include the new islands?
Yep, that includes all the islands China made. They're ours now.
You can vacation there now.
That's amazing.
They opened up like a hotel. You can vacation on one of China's
Can I
islands.
Can they give me one of the islands?
You can probably buy
Can I take it
one.
home with me?
I wouldn't see why not.
I would never want to own a private island.
I probably wouldn't either.
If I had resort and stuff on it, sure, but just in my own regular lame ass island, what am I gonna do there? Just an island with a forest maybe, and sand and water.
Just vibing.
Just sit on the island and cast away.
Speaking of the South China Sea region, though, we got the Philippines. They're doing their crisis still. What a time to be alive.
What a time to be alive. There's a crisis in half the countries in the world.
Yeah.
Not the United States though.
No, we're not yet.
No.
See our third episode, fourth episode?
Which one are we talking about? The one where
Which one did we talk about?
Violence.
Yeah.
The fourth one. The third one was. Let's bring it up. We're advertising our own channel on our own channel.
Nobody else advertises.
I have to get out of my tab of The Simpsons.
Legends.
I don't know why I am watching The Simpsons, but I am. Funny Homer Man. Homer. It was on our. Now looking at our titles are stupid.
Yeah.
They give no information on what we do.
That's the point.
I'm assuming it's the fourth one.
But anyway, Philippines. Half of their country is controlled by a Islamic separatist group who wants to make their own country. And the Philippines does not like that.
Wow.
And President Duterte, who was elected a couple years ago, he is a very strict president.
Uh-oh.
You can be executed in the Philippines, no jury trial, no nothing,
Nice.
for possessing drugs. Police can just shoot you in the street if they see you with drugs.
Do you think that's police brutality?
100%.
Yeah.
Without a question.
Just showed him.
Philippines, he's a very aggressive man, and he has people who are being aggressive back.
For him.
And so the only, proper way to solve the issue is to be even more aggressive. Or at least that's what he thinks.
Here we go again, mentioning the escalation. How both sides kind of have to escalate for the fourth time in the past 2 weeks. Where it's because if you don't escalate, they'll just destroy you.
So Philippines, interesting times. What else do we got in this area?
What do you think's going to happen in that one? Do you think they're going to end up splitting up into two countries? That's
I
kind of my
remember
guess.
talking about this with the issue with the Philippines in 2014. Because I was auditioned for my speech and debate team, and we had to write a speech on something, and I was just Googling what to write a speech on, and that was something that was brought up, and I was like, oh, I'll talk about the Philippines. So I gave a speech on the Philippines Civil War in 2014. It's 2020. It's been 6 years. I don't remember how long it's been going on before 2014, but it's been a while, and Duterte's not a great guy. So there's not going to be peace as long as he's president.
Right.
So I don't see it coming to a resolution.
A peaceful resolution.
No. And I don't see countries actively jumping at the bit to recognize two Philippines.
Well, it wouldn't be two Philippines, I guess.
Would be,
It'd be a
two
different-
separate countries,
right.
but I don't really see them jumping at the bit.
What do you think they'd name their country if they split? ISIP.
Maybe.
The Islamic State of Independent.
They do want an
Philippines.
Islamic State.
Yeah.
Which is why a lot
ISIP,
of
there you
people
go.
don't want to.
The Islamic State of Independent Philippines, or some nonsense like that.
Should trademark that before they get to it.
www.isap. Everything. That's how I'll get rich. Is copywriting that name.
Alright, let's move over here.
Thailand. What's in Thailand?
Thailand's not doing great. They have a king.
Yay! Everyone loves monarchy.
He's like, I'm not a big monarchy guy, but like, this king, is basically in a frat. That's the best way to describe it.
Most kings like he's outdated, is what you're saying.
Nah, I'm saying that he likes to party.
Yeah. A lot of the kings back in like the old monarchy days, all they did was party.
So apparently this king, he just like leaves the country and goes
mad bangers in say France.
Yeah, goes to like France and the UK and like throws bangers, and then he sent like a letter back to his home country, and he's like, what would be a great idea if we recreated the absolute monarchy. And I guess the people don't really like that idea.
What? That's like we mentioned earlier in not Colombia, might have been Colombia, might have been Egypt, with the guy who gets drunk with the idea to revolution.
Oh yeah.
This is the other way around. The king gets drunk and is like, let's throw a monarchy. And everyone's like, what?
Yeah, so it's a reverse revolution, and the king likes to party. It's an interesting time. Would you party with this king?
But sure. I'm not the big party, or I'm lame. But I don't see why I wouldn't.
I would 100%.
I mean, yeah.
Without a doubt.
If this king came into our podcast booth like, let's party, I'd be like, sure. Why would I say no?
Fair.
I might have ASL homework too.
Mm.
Sorry, king.
Yeah.
I can't come.
Maybe he can speak American Sign Language. Maybe he can teach you.
That'd be great.
I don't know. What a guy.
ASL makes me sad. It's tough.
Say something to me.
And say something to you.
Yeah.
Sign something to you.
Sure.
That's wrong.
He is in fact doing signing for those of you at home. He is doing the signs. I think he just spelled his name.
I said, I'm Austin.
What a guy.
Woo! I wish sign language, of course, sign language is like the worst topic ever to cover on a podcast.
Yeah.
Because sign language is all hand signs, and podcast is all the opposite. But I wish all of sign language could be, I don't remember the term because I'm bad, but an iconic sign where it's, the sign is what it is. Like standing up is, walking is this, and if you can't see how I'm literally just like making a little man with my fingers and walking. That's to walk. Like why can't they all be like that? This is sitting down. Like,
Legends.
But enough about American Sign Language. America is not under crisis.
Which country
Unless you're in
do you
South
wanna-
America.
Which country do you want to do now?
Well, since I just mentioned American crisis, let's talk about Mexico.
Mexico. Let's do Mexico.
Mexico's probably just criminals, yeah.
Yep, criminal violence remains high.
And the budget is bad for the upcoming year.
Yeah. You'll see that in a lot of countries with COVID. So many
Tough
people are
stuff.
being unemployed. The budget's not going to look great for a lot of these third world countries.
I mean, yeah, can't really look great,
There's not money to tax if people aren't making money.
And then it goes back around.
And then these countries are spending more
Because they have to spend more.
to, fight COVID. And
Have you ever seen the Lorax?
the guy who speaks for the trees.
Oh, like the new one.
Yeah.
It's, the guy at the end who sells all the air, and they're singing the song to let it grow.
Yeah. He's like, let it die.
Yeah, let it die. That's why
Let
we
it
should've-
shrivel up and die.
That's what's gonna happen to a lot of these third world country economies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe they should take Frank O'Hare's advice.
No. Now here's one. Do you think the United States should be involved in fighting criminals in Mexico? No. Not at all.
No.
No, not any consideration.
What are you leading me up to?
Well, because like my argument here is, although they're Mexican criminals, they have Mexican citizenship. They have a lot of their crimes in Mexico. They're also American criminals because they commit crimes in the United States. Also, they go cross border. And so I was just curious if you thought that because they are technically American criminals, is it worth our expense to pursue said criminals?
Right at the moment, no.
Well, I mean, not with COVID. I don't want my police officers going into a drug ring and then having like El Chapo sneeze on the guy and being like, "You got COVID now." You got him.
Got him. PGs. But I think it's a bad idea in our political climate to do this. Obviously, we've had Trump advocate for strong borders. And how would that look to people who want strong borders here and Mexican citizens if American enforcement just ran over the border to catch these criminals? How would that look to you if you're a Mexican citizen? If these police officers from another country come in, take people that they might not even be criminals, they might be taking these people, the American police might be just taking random people off the street that they think are criminals. Is that a fair thing to do?
I would say usually we work with the government of Mexico when we do these kinds of raids, but I would say I agree. I didn't think of that right now, but like the Mexican people hate Donald Trump more than anything else in the entire world. They hate Donald Trump. Like, it's not a good look to have Donald Trump do it. Now, if it was, if Obama was still in office, I would say, sure. Because the Mexican people had high regards for President Obama. Even if it was George Bush, they had high regards for George Bush. But President Trump is not the guy.
Not the guy to send hundreds of thousands of federal agents over the border into Mexico.
Legends. Pick another country, Austin. Country of what?
I want to talk about memes for a second.
Pick a random country.
Pick a random country.
Any country you want.
Any country I want. What about Egypt again?
Egypt round 2.
Let's
Oh no, the re-rise of President Sisi.
Sisi2.
Sisi2.
I CCU. Haiti. What about Haiti? I don't know what's going on in Haiti right now. Let's find out what's going on in Haiti. A bunch of protests due to criminal violence. Or amid criminal violence, I guess.
Interesting.
More police stuff. You mentioned this earlier with Colombia, how we've had our police brutality incidents.
Well, this is a different situation. They're protesting not because the police are bad, but they're protesting because the police aren't doing enough.
The opposite. I guess what I kind of meant was policing issue.
Mm-hmm.
We see the police issues in our country.
Yeah.
You mentioned Colombia, it's the police brutality. It's happening in a lot of these Central America and South American countries now. The police aren't great. It's kind of weird to me. The police seems like such an easy thing to not necessarily get right, but like be effective. You know what I mean?
Reading through this here on the crisis map, this is an interesting thing to talk about. So we have to ask ourselves, why is there an increase in crime? The increase in crime is because probably an increase in poverty. Haitians are being laid off due to COVID. They can't find work. And another thing that I noticed down here at the bottom of the description is the border with the Dominican is closed.
Yeah.
Haitians have a very weak economy. And so a lot of them work as cross-border employees for the rich Dominican Republic. And the border is closed.
Ow.
Don't hurt yourself.
Ouch.
I know this is a hard concept to understand, but
yeah, it's really ripping my hair out.
He hit his head on the wall.
No, I like resting this on this. There's a bulletin board here that has nothing on it because we're the only two people that work in this podcast booth ever, I think. But my hair got caught on it and pulled some of it out, and I'm sad.
But so Haiti probably has an increased rise in crime because people can't find jobs, and
When you don't have a job,
you got to
you're a
feed
little
your
more
family.
right. You're a little more willing to do whatever it takes.
And so people are protesting to have the police defend them from this rise of crime. Very interesting. Opposite of what we see going on in most countries that are anti-police right now.
It's not in my head forever, yeah.
Yeah, I know foreign policy isn't your tea.
Yeah, almost. He says that like it's an insult, as if I told him 30 seconds of recording. I'm not really great with foreign policy that much.
It's great. Pick another country. Let's talk about.
Let's talk about another country.
Pick another country.
Oh,
any country.
Any country.
You still got 10 minutes left.
10 minutes to talk about any country. Let's talk about. We already talked about China and Japan because we was South China Sea stuff. Can I zoom in over here? Let's talk about. Let's get happy. Let's talk about an improving situation. Let's talk about Afghanistan, which is improving. Because the government in Afghanistan has made strides towards peace with the Taliban. Even though violence is still going to rise in its borders.
Mm-hmm. Don't know how I feel about this one.
Should I get a different one then?
I mean, no, we can talk about it. My main concern is like, I want peace and all. Great, like
but with
peace.
The Taliban.
But like, also Taliban, not great.
Hot take.
Hot take. Taliban bad.
Who could have thought, huh? Uh-oh.
And the deal we made with the situation is we withdrew most of our troops, and I feel I want the American troops to come home just like everybody else. Right. We've been in Afghanistan for a decade, but at the same time, in Vietnam, we were in Vietnam for a decade and we gave up, and then look what happened to the Vietnamese people we swore to defend. They got slaughtered. Without our protection there, the members of South Vietnam got killed, their government was destroyed, democracy died. So what happens now when we leave Afghanistan?
Right, and that was a big problem back in 2016, like with the debates. That was a hot topic with Romney and Obama.
Hillary and Trump was
2012. Back in 2012.
Yes.
I wish either Romney or Obama ran in 2016, but no. In 2012, I don't know why I thought 2016.
I mean, it was a hot button issue in 16 too, right. Because Hillary, as Secretary of State, was very, into foreign policy. And so as a foreign policy person, she said, look, we need to stay in Afghanistan. Well, the American people don't want to hear, yeah, I'm going to continue another decade-long war. They don't want that.
Yeah, way across sea.
And Trump said, I'm going to get the people home. And people like that. Whether it was right or wrong didn't matter because that's what the American people wanted to hear.
I believe it was Romney in 2016 that I remember the line. He's saying that if we take our troops out, the Taliban's going to rush back in. They're going to flood back in.
And Obama knew they would, but he also said he was going to get troops out of Afghanistan because he knew it was the popular thing to say. But he didn't do it. He said he would, but he didn't do it.
Feels bad, man.
Yeah.
So moral of the story of that is if you're running for president, say you'll take our forces out of Afghanistan and you'll probably win.
Yeah, it's been a very good trend.
Yeah. They're, 2 for 2?
Obama's won twice saying that he was going to take the troops out, and he did get the troops out of Iraq. He did successfully do that. Granted, not well, because, as we said, when he took the troops out of Iraq, ISIS became a thing.
Right.
But he did that, Trump said he would. So there's been 3 presidents successfully elected by saying they were going to take troops out of Afghanistan.
And there's been 3 presidents who've said that they're going to take troops out. So they're 3 for 3.
3 for 3.
2 for 2 people-wise, 3 for 3 election-wise. So Is it a mistake this election for Trump to say it again? Not to say it again?
Maybe we'll see.
I like thought 30 years in the future, we don't have any troops in Afghanistan at all anymore. And presidents are still like, I'll take our troops out of Afghanistan. There's nobody left in there.
We're gonna leave one troop there.
I'm gonna bring our troop home.
Mr. Billy Bob. We're gonna keep Billy Bob there so every president can be like, I'm bringing Billy home.
And then they're gonna win on the spot. The electoral college landslide instantaneously.
Beautiful. But let's do one last hot take.
Take.
Do you think Afghanistan crisis is going to be over soon? Do you think this peace deal will be successful?
That's tough to say. It really is.
I think the Taliban's going to break it the first chance they get.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured. That's kind of what I was going for. But
all right, let's pick one last country to wrap us up.
Why don't you pick up a country then?
I'll pick a random country. Let's see what's going on in South Sudan today.
You tell me.
It looks like the government of South Sudan is meeting with their rebel group to see what is going to be their shared government strategy. So that is a promising, at least they're sitting down to talk about it.
Not so easy when you're put on the spot to read the country.
Oh, you want
summary, huh?
You want me to talk about South Sudan? I'll talk about South Sudan.
Go ahead and talk about South Sudan. All you.
Sudan was originally all one country. In 2006, South Sudan was recognized. Similar to the situation we've seen in Rwanda, South Sudan and North Sudan have had ethnic tensions. Sudan shares a border with Saudi Arabia and Egypt, which are both considered portions of the Middle East. During the expansion of the Islamic empires, a lot of Arabs moved into Sudan. Well, additionally, southern Sudan is very close to Uganda, the DRC, Kenya, and Ethiopia, which is considered normal Africa, So the Arabs and the African populations don't get along well together, which has caused a civil war. So Sudan and South Sudan had a decade-long conflict where the Arabs in the northern portion of the country committed genocide against the Africans in the southern portion. After a long conflict, South Sudan did get the right to their independence. However, because the Arabs were the wealthier of the two, they have oil money, connections to Saudi Arabia, guns, other weapons through the Middle East, compared to South Sudan, they got to keep all the good land. So although South Sudan did get its own country, it did not get a successfully prosperous country. Now, the other issue persists that Sudan is still not happy about this arrangement. Even though they lost the conflict and gave South Sudan their freedom, they are still sponsoring rebel groups within South Sudan. Additionally, due to South Sudan's poor environment and poor economic system, they never really got their feeding as a strong government, and so warlords rose. As I stated earlier, they do share a border with the DRC, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which is one of the most violent regions in the world right now. It has more UN peacekeepers in the DRC than anywhere else in the world because of how many warlords and different factions there are. And those also spill over into South Sudan. So you have a group of people who can't feed themselves. You have warlords who are pillaging the lands. You have Arabic nationalists who want to see South Sudan fail. And then you have the normal government who is just trying to make sure that people aren't being genocided. And so that's the current situation you have in Sudan. And the involvement seems to be that some of these rebel groups are actually sitting down and meeting with the government, which is a good sign. But even if they do make an agreement with this group, there's dozens more that they need to make deals with in order to have a functioning government. And I'm sure COVID is just making this situation even more stressful on an already poor community.
And they're cutting deals with who knows how many different rebel groups. What does that leave left for you? You know what I mean?
And, you know, you never know how much these rebel groups are asking for. You know, are they asking for a 10% stake in all government taxes? Like, what is the deal
There's a
actually
dozen
being
of them.
made? Yeah. So if you give a 10% stake to every single rebel group, you get 0. That's a big
I'm
L.
signing the letter L. Did you guess?
I did. But yeah, so how's that for South
There
Sudan?
you go.
You thought I couldn't do it, did you?
I was going to see if you could. You started at the beginning, which is what I was mostly mentioning.
I got through it.
Yeah.
I got through it. I know my Sudan
You do
very
know
well.
Sudan.
It's called the Darfur region. Look it up. A lot of people died there and still are dying. It's probably one of the most violent areas in the world. Darfur. Very interesting.
Very interesting.
That's the episode. That's it. We did it.
We covered an actual map.
Yeah, there's so much more to cover. You know, we went through probably, 20 countries maybe?
If that.
Yeah.
And you obviously can't see it. It'll be in the description below.
Mm-hmm.
But half this map is gray with crises.
Mm-hmm. And the Crisis Group is a fantastic organization. They will keep this map updated whenever there's a new event that goes on. Crisis Group, if you're watching this, I did just apply for an internship with you, so you should hire me. It'd be great. I'd do a great job. Yeah.
I mean, he knows about Sudan.
I do know about Sudan, so hire me.
So one last question for you then. After seeing this map, what do you think? Do you think the world is getting better or worse?
Better. Because what you don't see in the map
is all the good.
Is that, but also we're talking about people versus police. We're talking about people versus dictators. We only talked about one country versus country war with Armenia and Azerbaijan, which might not even be a war because the Russians are going to try to stop it. The moral of the story here is...
war's on the way out.
It is. Pre-1950s, you know, most war was between countries. You had World War I, World War II, the Prussian War, you know, French had so many wars, the British. Now what you see isn't war anymore. You see conflicts, you see mini battles, you see peace negotiations. Violence still exists, but war does not.
Right.
And I think that's a great step. I think it's a step in the right direction.
I think it's the most important step in the right direction.
Very good times.
We did it. We're surviving.
We did a map.
We did a map. We covered a map, and I didn't rant about a map.
Yeah.
But if we want to rant about a map,
you should see our second episode.
You should see the second episode titled "The Birds and MAPs." It's probably the most accurate title of all of them.
What's the title for this one?
An actual map.
An actual map.
I guess that one's even more accurate because it's just an actual map.
Well,
that's all we talked about.
Highly recommend reading into different crises around the world. There's so much to read about, and the Crisis Group covers all of them. And so, yeah, get some reading done.
Yeah.
Have a nice cup of joe and get ready for Friday the 13th.
Come in November. That'll be after the election on November 3rd.
Dun, dun, dun.
Which day do you think is going to be scarier, the Friday the 13th or the Tuesday the 3rd?
Can I say both?
No. You must choose.
Oh no, probably the 3rd.
Oh yeah, probably the 3rd. Are we covering the 3rd live?
Should be.
Because I know you're gonna get
plastered.
You're gonna get plastered. He's gonna fill
inebriated.
He's going to be
words we can't say for YouTube's algorithm.
Yeah, because we're monetized or something.
Maybe
we're not monetized. I'm shaking my head, but. We'll cover it live. What are the plans for that, do you think? We'll have a big map.
Another map.
Another map. The 3rd map. We'll have a map. The Electoral College map.
Wow.
And we'll work together to color it in with what we think is going to happen.
Another map.
Wow. So I think our ideas on who's going to win what are pretty similar.
Probably.
I mean, it's not too hard to guess, like, who's going to win Wyoming. Who's going to win California.
All right. Well, with that, we will be logging off.
Yep.
And we'll see you next week for the United Nations birthday.
Yes, I'm Austin.
I'm Carson.
And happy birthday to the United Nations next week.